Hello YouTube and welcome back to the nation of free to play. I'm Mr. Mondstadt and today it is time for another Spiral Abyss video. The new version of Abyss just dropped for the second half of version Luna VII, and in this video I will talk about the enemies, the best units to play, and give you my tips and tricks to help you in getting 36 stars. Let's go! Alright, first up let's have a look at the enemies of this floor 12. In 12.1 we have to fight one Hydro-Hilichurl Rogue, one Electro-Viop and a Fontaine Water Phantasm. These enemies will spawn in waves, so one after the other. On the other side we'll get one Secret Source Automaton Hunter Seeker, followed by the bigger brother, the Configuration Device. This one is the one that spawns two pillars, but more on that in a bit. In 12.2 we started with an Electro Abyss Lector and the Primal Geo Visharp. And on the other half there's a Mirror Maiden and then the Chenyu Vale boss, the Solitary Suani. And lastly in 12.3 we have the Watcher. This boss is also in the current version of Stygian Onslaught, so you might be familiar with its mechanics already, but regardless, I will go over it once again in more detail later in this video. We close this Abyss run with the Wayward Hermetic Spirit Speaker, so the Sidlali boss if I remember correctly. What are the blessings? Character's elemental skill damage is increased by 75% on the first side, and on the second side all characters get a 75% pyro damage bonus. Consider me confused, as my first impressions on this Abyss are actually good? The blessings are rather versatile and also the enemies look rather flexible. No lunar shield, no elemental restrictions? I am hesitant to say, but is this actually a fun Abyss after a long time? We're getting closer to Snezhnaya, so I assume we slowly get more new players again, and some returning players might also get ready for the Cryonation. Also the banner characters are Lohen and Mavuika, so no not Cry Luna units that need to be shielded. Speaking of characters though, who should you play? The first side seems to be designed for Lohen, as the 75% skill damage bonus will make him look pretty strong, and he should have no problem in breaking the Electro Shields of the Viop or the Abyss Lector, especially if you pair him with Doran. Dual Element Infusion is also a great strategy for the Watcher, so if you went for Lohen and have his best team, this Abyss is made for him. However, you don't need the Psycho Knight by any means for this lineup. Your biggest restrictions are the Electro Shields, the Hydro Phantasm and the Watcher. So Electro units and Hydro DPSs will not have an amazing time, but can still work with the right teammates. Other than that, basically every halfway meta team should get through. Nefer and Zebai teams, Mavuika, Arlecchino, Doran, Nicole, Skirk, probably Vaka and Kinich as well. Since the mechanics are pretty straightforward, this Abyss is only a DPS check. For breaking the Electro Shields, Dendro, Pyro and Cryo are the fastest elements, so Emily with Burning, Wriothesley or Sidlali with normal attacks, or even 4-stars like Gaming, Xiangling or Layla can be good options. Against the Geo Visharp, a shield is recommended, and against the Watcher you want two different FAC elements in your party. So far so simple. For the second half, this lineup is made for the other 5-star on banner, Mavuika. Her best team with Sidlali will have no issue whatsoever with any of these bosses and will walk through the Configuration Device, the Suani and the Spirit Speaker. The Automaton in 12.1 is a bit of a Night Soul bot, meaning you can accelerate the process a lot if you are in the Night Soul's Blessing state. It will then summon two Phlogiston pillars that you can't climb, but you can use Xylonen, Mavuika, Auron or Sidlali to easily get on top of them. There are other ways around the pillars and I will get to that, but just know that Natlan units have an advantage. The Suani needs to be frozen and then either melted or hit with a melee attack, so Claymore or plunge attacks. Cryo is therefore strongly recommended, and against the last boss in 12.3, Electro and Pyro units will deal with the Mimics the fastest. Bonus tip, Auron and Sidlali can mark the Mimics and freeze them in place, which makes the entire fight so much easier. To sum it up, Sidlali, Auron, Xylonen and Mavuika are great options for the second half of this floor 12. However, other Natlan units like Yansan, Muelani or Vressa will also be effective, and if you don't have any available, you can also use Arlecchino or C6 Gaming as a melt driver. Gaming can also jump on the pillars with his elemental skill and melt the Suani with no problem. While Skirk will be able to brute force the first 2 chambers as long as you have a claymore in your party to shatter the Suani, she will struggle against the cryo mimics of the last boss. However, you can also always change teams and come back with different units, for example an overload core for the Spirit Speaker. Since I get this question every time, yes, you can change your teams and still get 36 stars. Once you've 3-starred a chamber, you will not lose these 3 stars, even if you change your team and then need longer in the new run. So if you want to play Skirk for 12-1 and 12-2, you get 6 stars and then come back with an overload team, for example, and you would have only gotten 4 stars for the first 2 chambers with that team, but you still have 6 stars. So the time in the second run does not matter here for the first 2 chambers in this example. So you can just take it slowly, clear and start 12-3 with full energy. With the general advice out of the way, I will now take a closer look at every individual chamber. 12-1-1. This abyss starts with 1 Hydro Hilichurl Rogue. This one has slightly increased Hydro res, but other than that, nothing special. The Electro Vibe will steal your energy when it spawns and gets a white shield. So if you have your bursts available, try to use them before it can suck your energy. Your goal is to break the Vibe's white shield. In order to do so, you just need to deal damage to it. If you manage to break it in time, you will get your energy back and should be able to finish off this enemy pretty quickly. If not, the Vibe will then get an Electro Shield instead, and you now have to break that instead. Here the damage is secondary, but the elemental application is what matters. Since this is an Electro Shield, Pyro, Cryo and Dendro are the most efficient elements to break it. However, you will not get your energy back in that case. Still, you want to get rid of the Vibe as fast as possible to summon the third and tankiest boss of this chamber, the Water Phantasm. This one can hit pretty hard, so for more comfort I recommend a shielder or healer. It also has the most HP of the 3 opponents, but you can trigger reactions rather easily due to its permanent Hydro aura. And it is immune to Hydro damage obviously, so bear that in mind. Overall, this chamber is rather straightforward and does not have any special mechanics, so let's move on to 12-1-2. We start out with the Hunter Seeker, so 1 small Natlan bot. This one will perform different attacks and accumulate countermeasure points whenever a character enters the Night Soul Blessing state. Once the enemy reaches 100 of these points, it will unleash its laser attack and be exhausted afterwards for 4 seconds. During that time, its res will drop by 40%. However, since this machine is not too tanky in the first place, its mechanic does not really matter a lot and you can just get rid of it. However, after you've done so, its big brother will spawn, the Secret Source Automaton configuration device, and this one basically behaves the same way. It will also collect countermeasure points when a party member is in Night Soul Blessing state and its cap is at 200. Until then, it will perform various attacks and its resistance will be increased at 60%. After a certain amount of time has passed, or after the device reaches the 200 point cap, it will charge up its special attack. For that, the boss will create 2 phlogiston pillars in the arena. On top of these pillars are the mechanisms that you need to destroy to stop the automaton's attack and stun it. And as you probably know from previous runs against this bot, you cannot destroy these mechanisms with ranged attacks, so archers or catalysts won't work. Instead, you actually have to climb the pillars. However, you also can't do that with any unit, but you need Night Soul units like Lohen, Mavuika, Kinich or Kachina instead. Units like Sidlali, Auron and Aoife will work as well, of course. Alternatively, you can choose from a wide range of other units that can reach the top of these pillars. Xiao, Shenyun, Gaming, Veressa with their plunges, Kaching, Alhaitham, Lanyan, Chiori with their teleportation skills, Albedo and Dahlia with their rising flowers, Kazuo with a skill. The list of potential solutions is long. Once you're on top, just hit the mechanism once and fly over to the second pillar. And after you've dealt with the mechanisms, the boss will stop charging the attack and will be paralyzed. In this state, its res will be decreased to minus 30%, so now you can try to finish it off before the whole process starts from scratch. One bonus tip: there's a way to actually climb the pillars as well, but it is a bit tricky as your camera has to be in a certain angle and the timing of your input has to work as well. So if you're interested in that, I suggest you look up a specialized video on that. For most of you though, bringing a nicer unit is gonna be the easiest solution. 12-2-1. We start off with an Electro Abyss Lector. Not a new enemy by any means, so I keep this one short. It will get an Electro Shield once its HP drops to 20%. The shield will have a value of 36 gauge, which means you need 36 hits of either Pyro, Cryo or Dendro to break it. Anemo, Geo and Hydro will also work, but are not recommended. And after the Lector is dead, the main challenge for this chamber is the Primal Geo Bishop. This old boss has been featured quite a bit recently actually, but is not much more than an HP sponge. At the start of the fight, the Bishop will have super high resistance, so don't try to damage it here, as it will have little to no effect. Once it is up though, the rest drops to the normal level, and from then on, you can go ham on it. The only extra thing you need to know about is the primordial shower attack it will perform. To counter this one, you need to be shielded. Whether you bring a shielder or you pick up a crystallized shard does not matter. If you counter the attack with a shield, the boss will take damage and its res will go down by an additional 50% for a few seconds. And once again, a pretty straightforward chamber and nothing to worry about. 12-2-2. As usual, the first fight, in this case a Mirror Maiden, is just here to stall. The real boss fight is against the solitary Suani. Another older enemy, but I will still go over its mechanics just to be sure. The beast has 70% resistance against Hydro and Anemo and two special attacks, the Spirit Tide and the Spirit Wind. During both attacks, the Suani's res will be increased by 200%, so you can't really brute force it. In Spirit Tide, the boss gathers energy and infuses with both Anemo and Hydro. You will be asked then to freeze it using cryo attacks, and once you've done so, you need to get rid of that frozen aura on the enemy in order to stun it and decrease its res. The best way in doing so is to use shatter or melt reactions. Technically, superconduct, swirl and crystallize can work as well, but are overall less favored. Usually you won't be playing mono cryo anyway, but should you go for a Skirk team, remember to bring a melee unit like Shongyun, Fremine, Aino or Eula who can trigger the shatter reaction just so you can get rid of the frozen aura. During the Spirit Wind attack, the Suani will spawn 3 Wind Pearls and you can only defeat them with Fek elements, so either Pyro, Hydro, Electro or Cryo. Since you need to bring Cryo for this fight anyways, you should be fine. However, you need to destroy all 3 pearls and you probably won't be able to hit them all at once, so fast movement or ranged attacks can help with that. Whenever you interrupt either of these 2 attacks, the Suani will fall to the ground with decreased resistances and you can then get rid of its HP bar as much as possible during these time windows. 12-3-1. Finally, we have a new boss in this Spiral Abyss, the Watcher. Those of you who have tackled the current version of Stygian Onslaught should be familiar with its mechanics already, but let's go over them again. After a few seconds in the fight, the Watcher will gain a Fury bar and will record the element it is being hit with. Note that it will only monitor swirlable elements though, so once again Pyro, Hydro, Electro or Cryo hits. The damage does not matter here, but the amount of elemental hits. The Watcher will record all hits at the same time, but once one of these Fek elements reaches 3 hits, it will record said element. And if no Fek element reaches 3 hits within 5 seconds, the boss will then record that as Geo instead. Then the fight continues as usual before the same thing happens a second time. However, for the second absorption, the previously recorded element requires now 9 hits instead of 3, while all other elements still only need 3 hits. This means that you are advised to bring at least 2 different swirlable elements to this fight. And after the second absorption is done, the Watcher will summon 2 elemental stars. And these stars will be of the absorbed elements and will be at the center of the arena. If no element was infused, they will be geo-aligned instead. All FEC stars will be immune to their infused element and have a permanent aura, while geo-aligned stars will have 70% higher res. You now have 20 seconds to destroy the 2 elemental stars, or the Watcher will perform a powerful attack. All of this sounds more complicated than it is though, so what should you do in practice? As I said, bring 2 different swirlable elements to the fight. Then let the Watcher first absorb element A with 3 hits, and then element B, for example Pyro and then Cryo. The boss will then summon 1 Pyro and 1 Cryo star. You now have to destroy both of them, and the opponent will take big chunks of damage if you do so. Also, the stars can trigger reactions on the boss, which is why the order of destroying the stars matters. So, if you destroy the Cryo star first and the Pyro star second, you will trigger a melt reaction with a multiplier of 2. If you do it the other way around, it will be a reverse melt with a multiplier of 1.5. If you want to play Vaporize instead, here it's advised to destroy the Pyro one first and the Hydro one second, as that will trigger a bigger reaction than vice versa. And this is also why Electrocharge, Superconduct, Freeze or Overload will work against the boss, but will not give you that reaction buff when destroying the elemental stars. So these are the best tips to utilize the boss mechanics and get the most out of it. Of course, your party can contain other units as well. You could for example play Zebai with Linnea, Columbina and Yanfei. Yanfei will cause the Watcher to infuse Pyro, Bina will cause it to infuse Hydro, and Zebai will break both stars in no time. Flint's teams on the other hand, with Nefa, Bina and Sucrose, will struggle as you can infuse the 2 stars with Electro and Hydro, but Flint's will not be able to break the Electro star, and Bina's damage is probably not enough. Skirk would have a similar problem with a Cryo star, so if you want to play Skirk, you would want both stars to be infused with Hydro. And if none of that sounds good to you, you could also play Burning with Kniech. Yes, the stars will be both Pyro, but the infusion will happen so fast with the Burning Aura that you will not lose a lot of time. This boss is actually quite fun and gives you many creative ways to deal with it, so instead of limiting the players to one specific reaction, you can find many workarounds and creative team building options in this one. And lastly, 12-3-2. The Wayward Hermetic Spirit Speaker, or as I like to call it, the Sidlali boss, is more resistant against Cryo, but other than that, pretty standard. However, at some point in the fight it will spawn 4 radiant reflections of itself, who will attack you and be all over the arena. You now have to break their Cryo wards in order to find the real boss and stun it. These wards are 8 gauge Cryo shields, which means that Pyro is by far your most effective element, followed by Electro. Since the reflections are not grouped, bringing some form of AoE or fast moving characters can help. Ressa, Jansen and Mavuika are great options. Alternatively, you can also cheat a bit if you have Sidlali or Auron on your account. If you hold their special charge button, you can mark these reflections and freeze them in place. This way you don't have to chase them and can get rid of their wards pretty quickly. If you play Mavuika Melt, use Sidlani. If you play Overload, bring your favorite veggie farmer. After all the reflections are gone, the boss will lose 40% resistance and be stunned for a few seconds, so now kill it off and you are done. This is all you really need to know about this version of Spiral Abyss. Again, I think this is by far the best lineup we had in quite a while. No shill, no real restrictions, and bosses that reward active team building. Please, more of this, Hoyo. Surely we're not gonna go back to Lunar Shield-like mechanics as soon as we enter Snezhnaya, right? Right? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and it helped you in getting 36 stars. If so, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel as it is free for you and really would mean a lot to me. So thanks. And if you have any more questions about this Abyss, teams, rotations, gear, etc., leave a comment down below and I will try to answer as many as possible. With all that being said, thanks again for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye!